Young Turks. Happy New Year! Alright, well, we'll see if that's how it turns out for 2018. I did a video on our Facebook page, facebook.com/TheYoungTurks, where I said, basically, brace for impact. 2018, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. If anybody tells you they know what's going to happen at this juncture, they're crazy, dog. So this is potentially the wildest ride we'll ever take, this 2018. I have a far better sense of the short term and the long term, but 2018 is a midterm, and in more ways than one. Man, anything can happen this year. Anything, okay, for better or for worse, and certainly a lot of options out there for worse. But I want you guys all to rally, and we all got to fight together, okay? So we'll talk about that as the year unfolds, as the day and the week unfolds. Today on Rebel Headquarters after the Young Turks, I've got Benjamin Jealous, former head of the NAACP, running for Maryland, governor of Maryland, on the show, so that's going to be really interesting. And then we've got someone who put together a local campaign in Michigan that might actually end gerrymandering in the state. It's amazing. So, but I tell you that because I want you guys to focus on doing things together, and we'll start small. We'll go mid-size. Hopefully by then it'll be gigantic. But as we take this roller coaster ride, let's make sure that we take action together. Okay. All right, that's my little public service announcement to begin the show. In this program, we've got a wild ride for you guys. Michelle Bachmann might be coming back to take Al Franken's scene. Oh, no. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'm actually going to start off with some great news in a second, as you'll see. But also, Donald Trump might release a deadly virus into the world that might be airborne. Great. Okay, we'll show you that story. A revolution is, well, I don't know about it if it's a revolution, but certainly a rebellion has begun in Iran. That's a fascinating story. There's no end to the fascinating stories on today's show. Donald Trump wants to put more of his political opponents into jail, but yet one of the worst Republican senators is retiring, which is great news. So I'll give you all the twists and turns. So let's do it. Let's start with good news. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we got it. Weed is now legal in California. Now, if ever there was cause for celebration, this is it. And I'll tell you why. It's not just because people want to get high. It's because it has huge policy ramifications. And it's not just because it's California. It's because it's over. Here, I'm going to declare it over right now. Marijuana will be legal everywhere. Once I pound the gavel, it is OVAH, OVA. So, let me explain why. Let's go to HuffPost for an explanation of the law in California. Adults who are at least 21 years old can legally purchase recreational marijuana from select retail shops in California beginning Monday. So that was yesterday. A milestone that instantly makes the state the world's largest legal marijuana marketplace. Okay. So, it's gigantic. California, if it was its own country, would be among the top 7 economies in the world. So that's how large California is, both in size and in economy. But there are even wider ramifications. The state's new recreational marijuana industry has a projected value of as much as $7 billion, enough to make it the world's largest legal marijuana market, and is predicted to eventually generate $1 billion annually in local and state tax revenue. OVAH, OVA. Once the government gets hooked on that $1 billion, it's a gateway drug to having marijuana legal forever. You know, I'm using gateway drug, of course, mockingly of the right wing and the preposterous argument they made about marijuana for decades and decades. But it's not just about the government needing that tax revenue. Much more importantly, guys, and what is not mentioned in these articles nearly enough, almost not at all, is once you have corporations profiting from marijuana to the tune of $7 billion in California alone, we're done with this thing. Then all of a sudden corporate power flips to the other side and goes, marijuana? What do you mean gateway drug? Schedule 1. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. You know how much money we're making? And then you grease some politicians, and this thing is done. It's done. Nobody's going to turn down that kind of profit. And then they're going to want it in all the neighboring states, then all the states, and then all across the world. So corporate America, unfortunately, has a lot of downsides, including bribing almost all of our politicians here in America. But the upside is, if you let corporations do marijuana, you will have legal marijuana everywhere. Okay, California produces vast amounts, as HuffPo continues to explain, Matt Ferner writing here, vast amounts of marijuana, and has done so for years. Now, more than 20 years after the state legalized medical marijuana, 28 other states allow cannabis for medical purposes. 8 states, including California and the District of Columbia, have also legalized the plant for adult recreational purposes. You're not going to roll back 28 states' legislation. This is not an issue that goes back and forth. Oh, look, the right wing is winning now and the left wing is more momentum later. And it goes, no. Once marijuana becomes legal in California, as it has now become, there's no rolling it back. You're not going to roll back to 28 states. You know why? Because we've been right all along. There's nothing wrong with marijuana. So, does it have a couple of downsides? Of course, as anything does. But is it more dangerous than heroin and cocaine and meth and fentanyl? No, it's not. Is it more dangerous than painkillers you're taking? No. Is it more dangerous than alcohol? No. So if it was, you know what would happen after California legalized it, let alone all the other states which have already done so recreationally, let alone medical marijuana? People would have started dying, right? They would be like, oh my God, did you hear about the 13 guys who died yesterday from smoking marijuana? But that doesn't happen, because it was all lies. So instead what's going to happen is, hey, did you hear about the 13 guys or 13,000 guys who smoked marijuana the other day and felt a little bit better, either in terms of actual pain relief, which helps soldiers suffering from PTSD, as one of many, many examples, or did you hear about the 130,000 people who smoked marijuana yesterday and had a good time, and that was that? They made a good time illegal. I thought this was a free country, but it's going to be free again. And so this is fantastic news. Now, in California, they went a little farther. Now, why this legislation is actually even better and more progressive than in some of the other states, and honestly, I could have imagined when they started this process. The law goes beyond the regulation and taxation of marijuana and aims to repair damage from the country's failed war on drugs. Individuals with prior marijuana-related convictions that wouldn't have been a crime under the new law or would have resulted in a lesser punishment can petition courts to have their record reclassified or cleared altogether. That is great news. Now, remember, one of Richard Nixon's top aides said in the 1990s, yes, we started the war on drugs to go after our political enemies, hippie liberals and black people. He said it. He told you why they did it. Now to free those prisoners that for smoking marijuana, when all of our presidents lately have smoked marijuana, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, they've all done it, right? But they never went to prison because they're among the elites. To free those people who are not in the elites, who were imprisoned and arguably enslaved, working for $1 a day at slave wages in some of these prisons, that is a monumental difference maker. It's a great day in America. They should do this all across the country. And they're not done yet. In addition, some local jurisdictions are giving priority or other assistance to marijuana business license applicants previously convicted of low-level marijuana offenses or who come from low-income communities hit hard by harsh drug war policies. For years and years, for decades, they crushed those local communities. The only economic opportunity they had, unfortunately, was the booming drug trade in their neighborhood. Now they've turned around and said, we were wrong, so if we're going to start up shops, and this is going to be legal, and these are going to be real businesses, we should give those same communities which we oppressed and crushed and imprisoned for all this time for something that was actually perfectly safe, we're going to give them an opportunity first. In my mind, that is wonderful. And all these states, there are no cases of people going wild on marijuana. It was all propaganda. Nobody's lost their mind. That's not the gateway drug. The gateway drug, unfortunately, is legal prescription painkillers. As we've seen with the opioid epidemic, these steps are wonderful. One last piece of news for you in regards to this for the whole country. A recent Gallup poll found that 64% of Americans favor making marijuana legal, the highest since the pollster first posed the question almost 5 decades ago. Majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents all voiced support for legal marijuana. It's over. Marijuana will be legal everywhere, and it as well as should be. And California has, in my opinion, struck the death blow for this insane war on marijuana that has been going on for far too long. Another great job by one of the most progressive states in the country in leading the way towards righteousness, justice, and rationality. All right. Now, that's our interpretation. Let's turn to Fox News' interpretation. Okay. So today, California made marijuana legal. Of course, we voted on it earlier, and now it's in effect starting actually yesterday on Monday. And they also passed a law on sanctuary state, making California a sanctuary state. Now, this has made Fox News, of course, lose their minds in like almost literal reefer madness. So I'm going to show you 2 clips associated with that, and then I'll break down their lack of logic. But they're just fun anyway. Look at these goofballs. Let's watch.
January 1st, California became an official sanctuary state, not a sanctuary city, the entire state a sanctuary. This is incredible. So what they say, for the immigrants here among our population, you don't have to feel deportation. They're not immigrants. Immigrants are allowed to be here. Illegal immigrants aren't. They snuck in. That's a little dissemination. So now if you are in a public school, in a public library, a health facility, they are safe zones from Donald Trump. They say it's you against Donald Trump.
They said no such thing. Okay, we're going to get to the marijuana in a second. This is apparently California craziness. So, if you have only heard right-wing propaganda or you've never heard it explained before, what is a sanctuary city or state? What does it do? Does it say to undocumented immigrants, hey, you all come here, we're having a party, okay? Let's all get together and have nothing but fun, and you do anything you like. No. It says, if the federal government wants to turn our local law enforcement into their actors, meaning, okay, you're going to enforce federal laws. Okay, one of those federal laws is laws about immigration. Then you have to pay me for it. You can't do unfunded mandates. Remember when conservatives pretended to be against unfunded mandates? So you can't tell me, all right, keep that guy who's undocumented in your prisons for 3 years. Now, if the guy broke a law, they're going to keep him in California prison anyway, and then they're going to deport him anyway. That's already part of the law. We're talking about people who did not break the law. And the federal government says, I think that guy is undocumented. Now, I want you to keep him in prison indefinitely. California says, first of all, you didn't pay me to keep him in prison indefinitely. You send me the money, we'll have a conversation. Second of all, what do you mean indefinitely? That's against our due process laws, not only in the nationwide, but also for California. So, no, we're not going to just do whatever the federal government tells us to do and doesn't pay for, etc. They make it seem like we're all going nuts here, like we're finding undocumented immigrants and bringing them here and giving them cake. Hey, that's not what's happening. All right, now let's move to marijuana.
Not only if you're illegal, you're welcome in California. Also, if you want to get high, you're welcome there too. So you can be illegal and wasted on marijuana,
right,
and live in that state and be just fine.
The 6th state to legalize marijuana as of January 1st, and by the way, it's amazing how long the lines were. Well, 50% higher than they even anticipated.
So, underneath the Welcome to California sign, someone posted a sign that said, official sanctuary state, felons, illegals, and MS-13 welcome. Democrats need the votes.
Absolutely. How amazing is that? That's the message.
No, it's not. MS-13 is a brutal gang that, by the way, was created because of the insane war on drugs. We made it illegal for no reason, so people started dealing with it. And since it was illegal, the black markets formed, and in those black markets, terrible gangs formed, just like when we had prohibition of alcohol. Nobody wants anybody to commit any crimes in California because we live in California. Why would we want crimes here? They think that that's how liberals are. Oh, somebody come and commit a crime against me. No, you morons. if they committed a crime, they get not only prison time, but deported anyway. So the other reason, by the way, is sanctuary cities and states, on average, have crime statistics that are lower. Why? Because if you say to the federal government, you come and take away all the undocumented immigrants, and I'll work with you, and I'll keep them in my prisons forever, or however long you want them, etc. And then you know what happens? Undocumented immigrants then are reluctant to report crime to the police, which breeds lawlessness. It's a terrible idea. And you know what marijuana breeds? A good time. And oftentimes better health. But these guys on Fox and Friends, by the way, I don't even believe them. The chances of those three of having never smoked pot is infinitesimally small. I would be shocked if Kilmeade and Ducey weren't high consistently, let alone that they never did it. But now, according to them, California, they're nuts, man. They got big lines of smoking marijuana, and they actually want to treat people as human beings. No. It's all about MS-13. And probably Trump saw that and thought, oh, yeah, that's right, man. California, so Ducey nailed it again. All right. God bless California for passing rational laws. And if you made Fox and Friends angry, you've probably done a great thing. Okay. Let's move forward. This happened over the weekend, right before the weekend started, actually, but I'm not going to let it go because it's both too good and too grating for me. So Marco Rubio recently did an interview, and he mentioned a couple of things. One was the investigation of Donald Trump. On that, he actually had good things to say. But then he talked about the corporate tax cuts, and that was infuriating. First, let me give you the quote about the investigation. He said, I think the best thing that can happen for the president, for the country, and for everyone is that he be allowed to complete his investigation, referring to Mueller, as thoroughly and completely as possible, and that we allow the facts from that investigation to lead where they may. Now, that is the correct thing to say. If you care about America and you care about the rule of law, all senators, regardless of what party they're from, should want to enforce the law and let a special counsel do his investigation and not interfere or obstruct in that investigation. There's, of course, a second reason why Marco Rubio is doing it, because he's clearly going to run for president in 2020. And he already got his ass kicked by Donald Trump. He doesn't want to get his ass kicked by Donald Trump again, and if he thinks Donald Trump probably did it, and you let the investigation go, and it's a little bit of turmoil, but I'm right back in this thing. Now, if that was his only quote, though, I'd compliment him and say, good job, and be done with it, okay? And the 2020 comments and his run are more about the second part, okay? But both are related. So when they asked him about the tax cuts that they just gave to the rich, and most importantly, to multinational corporations, giant tax cuts, first he said, well, look, it's significantly better than what we had, but then he had the nerve to say this. He said, I thought we probably went too far on helping corporations. By and large, you're going to see a lot of these multinationals buy back shares to drive up the price. Some of them will be forced because they're sitting on historic levels of cash to pay out dividends to shareholders. That isn't going to create dramatic economic growth. That's what we said! But we said it before you voted on the bill. This guy votes for the bill, then the next day turns around and goes, oh, golly gee, it turns out we might have given the corporations too much. Did we do that by accident? Oops! Oh, it turns out they're not going to create jobs. The whole time the Republican Party was telling you that they were going to create jobs for the money they're going to get, we were lying. That was a funny joke. So, no, I actually think they're going to do stock buybacks and dividends. That's what we said. We did a whole investigation on TYT Investigates where we asked company after company after company, wait, are you actually going to create jobs? And the reality was, when you looked into the facts, no, they're going to do exactly what Rubio says here. They have historic levels of cash. They're going to pay out dividends to shareholders, and they're going to buy back shares. He says they're going to be forced. They're not going to be forced to. They want to. They're going to make unbelievable amounts of money for their executives. So why does Marco Rubio admit this today? First of all, it's not like you just found out yesterday. What were you doing, watching Young Turks archives and go, oh, man, I didn't know that. Oh, damn it, I voted the wrong way. No, he wanted to vote and help those corporations. They're his donors. The reason he makes this comment after the vote is because he's probably going to run for president again. And when he does, he'll turn around and you'll see it with your own eyes, and we might even go back to this clip. And he'll turn around and say, well, I told you after that the corporations wouldn't create jobs. I said it. I said they do mainly buybacks. I thought we were helping them too much. So he tries to have his cake and eat it too. Hey, corporate donors, don't worry, I delivered for you. Hey, voters, after I gave the corporations, in his own words, too much, I then said, well, golly gee, I feel a little bit bad about it. He doesn't feel bad about it. That was the whole point. He's owned and bought by those corporate donors. For him to disingenuously say this afterwards is appalling. I'm going to show you one last chart here. So I show you guys this a decent amount if you watch the show. And this is a pie chart of 1952 taxes and 2015 taxes. Back in 1952, corporations used to pay almost a third of all the taxes, 32%. In 2015, that's down to 10.8%. So a little less than 11%. They have massively reduced their tax burden. They shifted that tax burden onto you, the middle class. Now, after this gigantic tax cuts that even the Republican Senator Marco Rubio says were too much in helping corporations, their share of taxes will go down even lower. Your share of taxes will go even higher. The system is rigged. It's rigged in the most obvious way. Donors privately finance elections. The politicians who are corrupt, who took that private financing, work for private interests. They work for those corporations. And then later they try to trick you into getting your vote by saying, oh, golly gee, I've had second thoughts. I think I might have helped corporations a little too much. Yeah, that's very cute, Marco, but nobody's buying it. If you had these reservations, there was an easy way to show it. You should have voted no. You voted yes, because you serve those same corporations. That's your job. You're a water boy for them. Okay. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, a deadly virus, or a series of deadly viruses, that Donald Trump just said could get created. What could go wrong? I'll explain. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay?
What?
Okay?
Like, physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at PYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to, do your daily duties for the main show.
You don't have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible. But you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you, 2 different types of grilled cheeses with, tater tots for lunch. You can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost that.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited. Did anybody call for an editor? Need this in an hour. You're an editor too. Fuck you.
Alright, back on the Young Turks. I am Sock writes, and so did freedom win or did money win in legalized? There's nothing like lighting up while Jenk announces legal marijuana. Okay, agreed. Mike says, I was in LA a few weeks ago and got weed because I thought it was already legal for recreational use. Oops. I'm greatly amused by that tweet. Mike, I think you're going to be okay. Captain Jinglepants says, I know what's going to happen in 2018. TYT is going to get even bigger. Well, Sir Jinglepants, we thank you very much for that vote of confidence. I like that Anna once called you Sir Jinglepants. I'm going to stick with that. All right, here we go. Now let's talk about deadly viruses, including Michelle Bachmann. But one thing at a time. Okay. Okay. Just when you thought Donald Trump couldn't cause a bigger mess, buckle up and brace for impact. New report out. Alternate has a story here. The U.S. government announced it was lifting a 3-year ban on federal funding for experiments that alter viruses to make them even deadlier. Great! What could go wrong? Well, Trump, of course, had to undo that ban because it was done under Obama. If Obama did something, then Trump has to do the opposite. Let's find out if this is potentially dangerous. Gain-of-function research, as they call it, in which scientists make pathogens more powerful or easily transmissible, is aimed at preventing disease outbreaks by better understanding how they might occur. The studies allow scientists working in a highly controlled environment to learn how a flu virus might mutate into a superbug capable of killing millions. A sort of game of wits played to gain insight into nature's unpredictability. Now, I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea. Largely, it's scientists that are working on this, and they're not doing it to kill millions of people or to spread disease. No, they're doing it to fight disease. Here, I'll give you a little bit more on that. The ultimate goal is to proactively create vaccines, medications, and other solutions to stop contagion in its tracks. But the problem is, in order to do that, they're creating the killer vaccines and studying them. But what if they get out? Now, a lot of us have seen movies like this, but it's not just a movie, as you're going to see at the end of the story. This has happened before. So we're playing a very dangerous game. So, more on this story from Kai Holloway. The new National Institute of, Kali Holloway. The new National Institute of Health Policy reverses a 2014 Obama administration funding ban on gain-of-function research projects specifically involving all forms of influenza virus, Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS, and severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. The new rules would extend beyond those viruses, applying to any pathogen that could potentially cause a pandemic, according to the New York Times. For example, they would apply to a request to create an Ebola virus transmissible through the air. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, look, I trust that these are good-intentioned people that are doing this in the name and interest of science, and so that we can be prepared when epidemics break out. But I think that incompetence is the trademark of this administration. As Scaramucci once said, the fish rots from the head down. I mean, Trump is the guy who looked at the solar eclipse. They told him not to. Somebody screamed while he was doing it. He was like, huh? I mean, you don't think he'll go and be like, what's going on here? Blah. Okay, now, he's not physically, literally going to do that. I hope not. But when you have an incompetent administration who doesn't care to do its homework, remember, they give him really important foreign policy matters in the size of a tweet, otherwise he can't concentrate, and they put his name in it. So, and what does he do? He hires other incompetent people. Remember, his judges recently got laughed out of the Senate, some by fellow Republicans, because they've never been inside a courtroom. One was declared unanimously by the American Bar Association as completely incapable of doing the job. Unqualified. They said unanimously agreed that he was unqualified. Now, meanwhile, in other parts of the government, they are saying that you are not allowed to use phrases like science-based and evidence-based. You want those guys giving the orders on what kind of pandemics we could play around with creating airborne viruses? No. Even under careful watch, this has led to many problems in the past. Because why? We're humans. We make mistakes. You make a mistake with a virus like this, and we're all in a world of trouble, literally. So let me give you some instances in the past that did not turn out well. In 2014, CNN reported that dozens of workers at the CDC had been accidentally exposed to anthrax, while others had mishandled samples of the bacteria. No staff were found to be infected by the disease after prolonged monitoring. Man, I make a mistake on air, and we get to maybe edit the video or take it down. We get to issue a correction. Everybody lives. You make a mistake with anthrax because we're all humans and we make mistakes, and not necessarily that everyone lives. But wait, it gets worse. And a Vice Motherboard report notes that between 2003 and 2009, there were 395 events reported that could have resulted in exposure to toxic agents, although this resulted in just 7 infections. So I'm sure that the scientists working on it are doing it with great intent. But under this administration, the last thing I want them doing is playing around with deadly viruses that could be airborne and affect millions of people on the planet. Put down the viruses. Trump has gone viral enough. Let's just save this for another time, or perhaps never. Okay. So, now I'm moving on to a different kind of virus. That's Michelle Bachmann. And she might also be back. Okay. Al Franken recently said that he would be resigning and stepping down from his Senate position. So we're going to have a race for Senator of Minnesota. Guess who's going to step in? Well, it turns out Michelle Bachmann has been talking to God again recently. Let's watch.
Now in Minnesota, Al Franken, as you know, has resigned. I'm from Minnesota. I've had people contact me and urge me to run for that Senate seat. So the question is, am I being called to do this now? I don't know.
Yeah, she doesn't know. She doesn't know. Could be. Maybe God called, but she missed the call. They've been playing phone tag the whole time. If you don't remember, in 2012, Michelle Bachmann claimed that God had decided that she should run for president. She said that over and over again in the primaries. Then apparently God decided that he was just punking her because she got clowned in those primaries and didn't come close to winning. Then she decided that God told her to get the hell out of the race. Now God's back on the line. So the reason you don't know, Michelle, is because God is not actually talking to you. Look, I know that for the religious folks, you guys get mad at us folks who are not believers, and you think that you are having conversations with God. But look, if you got to guess, it's probably not a real conversation. It's probably just in your head. Like, if God actually calls you, all right, then, and you got him on voicemail, I hear you, okay? If God wanted to communicate to you, why would he make it so vague? Why doesn't he send you an email? Why doesn't he DM you on Twitter? But I gotta say these things, and I know, like, for people who don't believe in religions, you find it, like, absurd. It's hilarious, haha. But for religious folks, they really think, a lot of them think, it's not just Michelle Bachmann, that God is in constant communication with them. And she's like, God, do you want me to run? Don't you want me to run? Last time you clowned me. I don't know. I told everybody you were on my side. It turns out you were on Mitt Romney's side, which made no sense. Or actually, Mitt Romney lost to Obama. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Did God want Obama to win? Twice? But look, for the regular religious person, I'm trying to talk to them in some sense to them. We can agree, we can disagree. But these folks who are the so-called leaders, Michelle Bachmann, and she's talking to Jim Baker here on his show, are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Listen to the next thing Jim Baker says.
Could you handle it again?
Oh, I could handle the job. I know how to do the job. I know how to do the job.
But the pain of the job.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I've got to figure out.
It's a dirty fight.
It is.
People,
it isn't even
this country, everything about what is going on, the fight for everything, the political and the press, it's dirty.
It's like nothing we've ever seen before.
It's a fight to death.
And
right now, they want to kill the President of the United States. And if they could put a contract, which they probably already have, they would do so.
Wait, what do you say to that? But they rile people up. A lot of people watch that show and they go, oh, yeah, God definitely wants Michelle Bachmann. And God, this, that, the other thing. And, oh, no, yeah, of course, they're trying to assassinate the president right now. Oh, yeah, well, that's definitely happening. I heard it on Jim Baker's show. It's true. It's not true. Nobody trying to kill the president right now. There actually was one assassination attempt on Trump, but nobody ever talks about it. Why? It was a young white guy from Britain, so they couldn't demagogue on it, so they just dropped it in terms of propaganda. That guy should actually be punished to the fullest extent of the law, and I hope he is, but nobody's paying attention. Look, you know what? I believe in Minnesota, and I believe that you are not going to pick a lunatic like Michelle Bachmann. So I want her to run. I know, be careful what you wish for. But if she's a Republican candidate, and she's going out there all over Minnesota going, God faxed me the other day. He's a little behind the times, and he wants me to be the next senator, blah, blah, blah. Good luck to you, sister. Try that all you want. I don't think it's going to work. I think you sound absolutely ridiculous. And I do have to confess to being entertained by you, though. So come on back. See how it looks. The water's warm. Come on, Michelle. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay. We move forward. Speaking of people that are making a comeback. Okay? So Orrin Hatch is the longest-serving Republican senator there is in Congress. He's been there for 42 years. He's powerful head of the Finance Committee in the Senate. He had always wanted to do tax cuts for the rich, and he finally got it, and he was elated by that. And then the Salt Lake City Tribune named him the Utah of the Year. He proudly tweeted that out. He unfortunately did not read the article, as he apparently does not read the bills. And so when he read the article, he found out, oops, they actually were saying he's the most important guy in Utah, but they also said he had, quote, utter lack of integrity, and he had an unquenchable thirst for power. So, oops, shouldn't have tweeted that out. So it's obvious that some folks in Utah are trying to push Hatch out. They've had enough. I argued at the time that it was because Mitt Romney wanted to take his place. And he has a lot of very powerful allies in Utah. So today Orrin Hatch came out with a statement. Let's begin to watch.
My fellow Utahns, for over 40 years I've had the great honor of serving as your senator. As many of you know, I came up during the Great Depression living in a ramshackle house built with recycled lumber from the local scrapyard. My parents gave us everything they had, but in the eyes of the world, we still didn't have much. Only in a nation like ours could someone like me, the scrappy son of a simple carpenter, grow up to become a United States senator.
Man, he's got scrap on the mind. He's scrappy from the scrapyard. Okay, and they put together scraps. Remember, I was poor once before I became corrupt and took all the money. And got all the money from my lobbyist family members, from all the corporate donors that we got that we just gave the giant tax cut for. You remember, you too can grow up to be scrappy and take giant checks from corporate donors. Only in America. So, is he going to the scrapyard? Well, let's watch.
When the president visited Utah last month, he said I was a fighter. I've always been a fighter. I was an amateur boxer in my youth, and I brought that fighting spirit with me to Washington. But every good fighter knows when to hang up the gloves. And for me, that time is soon approaching. That's why, after much prayer and discussion with family and friends, I've decided to retire at the end of this term.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Hatch! Down goes Hatch! Down goes Hatch, finally, after 42 years. Okay. Now, did we get him? No, Mitt Romney got him. I love this coy quote that his spokesperson gave before Hatch decided to step down. He said, I haven't spoken directly to the governor, referring to Mitt Romney, about his intentions, but I do think he maintains a desire to serve the public. I think if an opportunity arose, he would seriously consider it. Oh, you think so? Of course, he's going to run for that seat. And they say that he'll probably win it easily. And then, of course, Twitter was all over this. I can give you dozens of these. I'll give you one, though. This one was fun. Credit to Colin Campbell there. That's Romney on his horse, and it says, time to put on your coat, Rafalka. We ride west tonight. Remember they were bragging about how Mitt Romney was down to earth? And his wife also does down to earth things like she makes horses dance. I'm not kidding. That's real. They're like, what? Doesn't everybody make their horses dance? Well, they're going to be dancing over to Utah. Of course, Romney is Mormon. He helped Utah with the Olympics back in the day. Then became the governor of Massachusetts, and now probably heading back out to Utah to become a senator. I'll give Romney this, man. This guy is persistent. He will not let this bone go. He wants to get into government, and he wants to come back. And if you think he won't run for president again, you don't know Mitt Romney. So this is his way of snaking back in. Man, he shivved Orrin Hatch hard. Nothing I like more than Republican on Republican crime. Okay, and remember, Romney was also tough on Trump and said a lot of things about how during the campaign how he was crass, and then he also said that Roy Moore was immoral, and he took a tough stance. Of course, until Donald Trump said he might become Secretary of State, and all of a sudden you had a different Mitt Romney. So if you think Mitt Romney's going to be a tough guy in the Senate, don't forget, this might be the Mitt Romney we wind up getting. Oh, that's so sad. That's one of the saddest pictures I've ever seen. That's when Donald Trump was saying, oh, sure, maybe I'll make you Secretary of State. Of course, I'm going to give it to the CEO of ExxonMobil. They got to deal with Russia. Come on, Reek. I'll give you a little bit of power. That's who Mitt Romney is. Can't wait. All right. I got to take a break, guys. I know you want me to keep going, but don't worry, I will right after the break. Donald Trump with another insane, not just conspiracy theory, but a plan to maybe arrest his political opponents. Who's he targeting this time? And then, unfortunately, another right-wing terror attack that, of course, no one else is talking about. We'll share it with you when we return. Alright, back in the Young Turks. The Forgotten Arm writes in, so cut the funding / hiring of people at the CDC while not trusting scientific terms or methods. Do you want zombies? Because that's how you make zombies. Norma writes, did Jake just quote Scaramucci on the potential consequences of deadly viruses? My God, we're doomed. And John Connor writes, Trump to release virus soon. Symptoms include dull senses, inability to control brain-to-mouth communications, baldness, and an orange hue. Members of the day are Bobby Smith and Brittany Hodge. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being members. We'll talk about our New Year's Eve weekend. When did I go to bed on New Year's Eve? Did I go to a party held by some here at TYT? Did we have nothing but fun? What did I do? What did Anna do? We'll have that fun discussion in the post game. Of course, members get the full 2-hour show, no ads, and you support independent media and Rebel Headquarters, and Old School, and post game. TYTnetwork.com/join. Come join and support independent media as we try to give it to you as it is. So, speaking of which, let's go over here. Okay. So Donald Trump is back with yet another conspiracy theory and why more of his political opponents should be in prison. This one is going after Huma Abedin. She was the top aide to Hillary Clinton. Why? Well, let's begin to explain. Media writes, according to an FBI report obtained by the conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch, Abedin used a Yahoo account if her official State Department account was down or if she needed to print an email or document. This was back when she served under then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in the report. Abedin explained that it was difficult to print from the DOS system, so she routinely forwarded emails to her non-Department of State accounts so she could more easily print. Oh my God! They got her! She used a Yahoo account! Oh, round them up. I'm not kidding, that's the thrust of this. So, let me give you the actual background on this. So, they say it was a big problem that she's transferred some official emails to her Yahoo account, and the Daily Caller, whatever they are, then wrote a new article about this, saying, Judicial Watch got the emails, and some of them were on the Yahoo account, and then Yahoo was infiltrated and hacked. So, since they hacked 1 billion accounts, Abedin's must have been one of them. So she, I guess, kind of must have exposed some of those emails to potential hackers. first of all, it is massively tangential. It's a tiny little story, but more important than any of that is that this is what James Comey actually investigated. And what actually led to potentially Donald Trump winning was, remember when Comey, a little bit before the election, came out and said, oh my God, there's new emails from on Huma Abedin's laptop because it might have gone to Anthony Weiner. So they looked at all these emails. This is just Judicial Watch getting the old emails that the FBI already investigated and found no criminal activity at all. But that didn't stop Donald Trump, of course. So he tweets out, crooked Hillary's top aide, Huma Abedin, has been accused of disregarding basic security protocols. She put classified passwords into the hands of foreign agents. No, she didn't. No, that's because she has a Yahoo account. Insanity, right? Remember sailors' pictures on submarine? Jail. Deep State Justice Department must finally act. Also on Comey and others. You're the President of the United States of America. If you want your Justice Department to take official action, you think there's a just cause, you're worried about a crime, pick up the phone and call them. I don't think he realizes that he's president. Instead, what he's doing is propaganda, distraction. Oh, Mueller's investigating me, but why? And Comey, I fired him because he was investigating me. But the problem is, Comey, lock him up. Lock up, jail, Abedin. Arrest all my political opponents. The reason he can't call the Justice Department and tell them that is because you can't arrest your political opponents in America. That's not how this country works. So instead, he blurts it out on Twitter. And when he does, it becomes official because the president said it. And it creates a giant media cycle. So more important than this stupid story, I want to, of course, break down the hypocrisy and of this story and show you its irrelevance, but also to show you how the smear works. So, in a case like this, the right-wing smear machine, they'll have the Judicial Watch, which, I have mixed feelings about Judicial Watch. I think the conservatives have all the right in the world to have a legal organization that is their own, that pursues it, but a lot of times they dredge up stuff that they just for the rest of this smear machine to work, okay? So then they dig up something that's old, Daily Caller, which is another one of those right-wing websites that you shouldn't trust a word in any of those right-wing websites. It's nonsense after nonsense, made-up story after made-up story. And in this case, they're like, oh my God, she had a Yahoo account. Yahoo was hacked. We know it, right? So then it goes on Fox and Friends. At 7 a.m., Donald Trump watches, and right after Fox and Friends is over, Donald Trump tweets this tweet. And then all of a sudden it became a real story because the president said it. Repeat and repeat and repeat. Just take anything, any insane thing written on any insane right-wing blog, then put it on Fox News, and then Trump will say it, and then it'll be an official story. There is no equivalent to that on the left. And forget the left. For the regular news, no one has a machine like this. New York Times will run a story, and then if people are interested, people will talk about it for a while. If NBC has a story, people might talk about it a little while, and then they drop it. But they don't have a regular machine that takes fabricated stories, or even real stories, and then hypes them up and hypes them up. Have a news network that does nothing but hype them up, and then have a president make them official so that everybody's talking about, well, I don't know, should we put Huma Abedin in jail? Should we put James Comey, the former head of the FBI, in jail? What kind of insanity is this? By the way, one last thing on this. If they're going to jail, they're probably going to have company, because if you didn't see this story, this happened recently. There's a headline for Politico. Hundreds of White House emails sent to third Kushner family account. Now, turns out that both Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and Ivanka, his daughter, both used private email accounts, which are easily hackable. Even after they did the lock 'em up chant, even if after they said Hillary Clinton private second, they sent it to a private email account, we should put her in prison. They chanted it. And then they got in during the transition and at the White House, and they're like, who cares? Let's use private email accounts. So Donald Trump, you want to lock up Huma Abedin and James Comey, put your daughter and your son-in-law right next to them in the jail cells, let alone other people at the White House who did it, including Steve Bannon. You guys all want to go to jail? You all want to go to jail? Let's use the same standard. No, all of these are small little stories. And if the president didn't attach a giant, bullhorn to it, in reality, this thing was already adjudicated. Again, if we did likewise, we would take the Kushner and Ivanka story, which we covered and told you was a small story, mainly pointed out their hypocrisy. And we would have made a federal case out of it. Okay, so you know why? We had bipartisan agreement. Even Trey Gowdy, one of the most right-wing guys, the Benghazi hatchet man for the Republicans, agreed with Cummings, and they put out this statement. With numerous public revelations of senior executive branch employees deliberately trying to circumvent these laws by using personal, private, or alias email addresses to conduct official government business, the committee has aimed to use this oversight and investigative resource to prevent and deter misuse of private forms of written communication. They said that about Trump staffers, about Ivanka, about Kushner, about Bannon, about all of them. They say they have tried to circumvent the law. Now, the reality is, it really is a minor issue. They shouldn't do it. Ivanka shouldn't do it. Huma shouldn't have done it. Hillary shouldn't have done it. And we called them out on it just the same way. But if we were the right wing, we'd be like, lock them up! Lock them up! They circumvented the law! Why isn't Ivanka in Guantanamo Bay yet? One side lies and does giant smear jobs. The other side is rational. That's the difference in America. All right. Now, I'm not done yet. One last thing. Okay. Unfortunately, we had yet another mass shooting in America. You might not have even heard about it because we have so many of them. It's hard to keep track. In this case, cops were shot and killed. It's a really bad story. So let's go to CNN here. Matthew Reel, a 37-year-old former Army reservist, shot 4 sheriff's deputies who responded to a complaint at his apartment in the Denver suburb of Highlands Ranch on Sunday morning, killing one, police say. Reel was killed during a subsequent shootout with a police tactical team, and clash that also left a SWAT officer injured, authorities say. Now imagine, so this is Matthew Reel, right? Imagine if, instead of looking like this, he was an African American, and he had written blogs about how cops were unfair to black people. Imagine if he had said, I believe in Black Lives Matter, and then shot 5 cops. You think you would have heard about it then? I think it would have been news 24/7. Fox News would still be talking about it. This just happened. Nothing. Okay. Tony Spurlock writes,
Fighting back.
This is for speaking for the cops. There were well over 100 rounds fired. He's the Douglas County Sheriff, as you can tell there. There were well over 100 rounds fired. The deputies all went down within almost seconds of each other. So it was more of an ambush type of attack on our officers. If it was a Muslim that did an ambush of 5 cops, shot them all, and killed one of them, do you think that would be a small story or a gigantic story? If it's a guy who claimed that he was for Black Lives Matter, do you think that'd be a small story? We don't have to speculate. We had guys who were not connected to Black Lives Matter. We had a guy who was kicked out of every African American group he was in, who did a police shooting of similar scope, and it was nonstop news. Nonstop news. And look, by the way, that's fair. It's a big deal to have 5 cops shot. But when it's a white right-winger, it doesn't help the narrative. So how do we know he's a right-winger? We'll get a load of this. Police haven't revealed suspected motives for Sunday's shooting, CNN explains, but several law enforcement agencies had been aware weeks beforehand that Reel was accused of writing harassing or suspicious messages online, officials said this week. That includes harassing posts that Reel put on social media sites in November about a traffic stop in the Denver suburb of Lone Tree. So here's a guy who has been writing harassing stuff online, including about cops. And then he wrote stuff about his old law school. And they even had an alert at the school saying, hey, watch out, this guy's unstable. And what he had written about them was, quote, outrageous, vulgar, and alarming, according to the VP of Communications at University of Wyoming. But everybody said, oh, no, he's just having fun. I hear about these alt-right trolls online. They're just having fun. Being vulgar is so fun. Telling people you're going to harm them is so much fun. We're just having fun, right? His Facebook page contained a number of memes and references associated with the alt-right and message board 4chan. Okay. Now, look, guys, I'm not a knucklehead right-winger. So, do I think that means everybody in the alt-right is guilty about this? No. He apparently read Breitbart News a lot. Does that mean Breitbart is, by definition, guilty and all the reporters and Steve Bannon is guilty? No. Okay? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you have a guy who's consistently saying outrageous things online, not even all those guys, of course they're not all guilty of anything along these lines, or they're not all going to act violently. But are some of them going to do what they said? Yes! Get it through your thick head. They're not all just joking. Here's more. A review of his Facebook page reveals that he was fond of posting memes associated with the alt-right, specifically Pepe the Frog.
Yeah.
How many times have I heard people go, it's fun. It's fun. When they say that they're going to, come to your house and they're going to do this to you and that to you, it's just fun. It's just fun. When they say they're going to shoot you, it's just fun. When they say they're going to rape women, it's just fun. They say it all the time. When they say they're going to come kill you, oh, you're getting trolled. You have no sense of humor when somebody says death threats to you. It's just fun. Right? Here's the most common word he apparently used. You ready for it? Cuck. Just fun! Zachary Parrish was the officer who was killed. He had 2 kids at home. We actually care about the cops. And we care about nonviolence. We don't want anyone on the left doing it. We don't want anyone on the right doing it. We don't want anyone doing it. We care about innocent human beings. And that's why we want to make sure that we fight for justice for all of them, including the police in this country. And as I've said a million times on the show, part of the reason that the cops are nervous and shoot quickly is because everyone else has a gun. So they went in, and in this case, they got ambushed by a guy that I'm sure that a lot of those people online said was just having fun and using all those words and memes and all those threats, but he was kidding. Well, he wasn't kidding, and now a lot of people are hurt, and Zachary Parrish, who everyone at the police department described as a cheery, wonderful young officer, is killed, and he's not going to be able to go home to his family tonight. That's the reality of what happened there. All right, Young Turks.
You taking shower now? Huh? Or you taking shower tomorrow? Okay, bro, you got the super good on too.
All right, back on the Young Turks. I want to get to some stories pretty quickly, so I'm just going to read you one tweet here. Ryan Newton writes in, quoting me, "What kind of insanity is this?" They referring to the Huma Abedin story and imprisoning of his political opponents. He says this insanity is textbook authoritarian fascism.
Yeah.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is exactly right, and it's not an exaggeration. That's exactly what fascists do. They start to slowly destroy the rule of law, put their own thugs in place of law enforcement, and then slowly start to target their political opponents and then eventually put them in jail. So, 2018, buckle up. All right, Casper, speaking of buckle up, the Iranians are buckling up.
Yes, they are. The protests have continued in Iran, and unfortunately, they have been met with so much violence from authorities that the death toll has increased. So far, we know that at least 21 people have died as a result of these protests, and there have been hundreds, if not more, arrests. In fact, in Tehran alone, there have been about 450 arrests. So what we know so far is that the government of Iran is clamping down on these protesters by using violent force. We also know that they are shutting down social media and even encrypted communication among individuals in the country in an effort to squash these protests. Now, the Ayatollah has released a statement in regard to these protests, and he believes that there are some conspiratorial forces at play. So let me give you his statement. He says, during the escapades of the past several days, Iran's enemies, using the various tools at their disposal, including money, weapons, politics, and security apparatus, have allied with one another to create problems for the Islamic establishment. Now, he wasn't specific about the players at hand. However, we do know that there is some suspicion that this is a Saudi-led effort, and we also know that the United States is allied with the Saudis in regard to Iran and the danger that it poses to the world. At least that's the message that they continuously send out. So in addition to providing military support for Damascus against Syrian rebels who receive backing from Gulf states, Tehran is providing aid to Houthis in Yemen who are fighting Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, to kind of show you what the conflict is there, just to give you some context of why it is that the Ayatollah would think that there are foreign forces at play here.
So, let's talk about both sides of this issue. So, first of all, I have to confess to being a little annoyed by the mainstream news coverage of this. They're not saying anything wrong. They're just leaving out a decent-sized chunk of the story. They're even pointing out, hey, they got a conflict with Saudi Arabia and Yemen. But the New York Times, for example, said that the demonstrations came, quote, largely seemed to come out of nowhere. Well, okay, look, I get it. I think that they're meaning it wasn't like there was just a corrupt election or we just found out a piece of news. But at the same time, it's not out of nowhere. I mean, it was a lot of your own reporting about Saudi Arabia that we covered on the show, that the Saudis were trying to foment an uprising in the case of Hezbollah, against Hezbollah. They did it with Palestinians. They tried to get Sunni jihadists to fight against the Shia influence. And even the jihadists were like, That's crazy, dog. We're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, as Saudi Arabia is going around doing all this throughout the Middle East and is in a war with, the Shia in the form of the Houthis in Yemen that Iran is backing, all of a sudden there is demonstrations against Iran. And so, look, I'm not saying that the New York Times should say it's definitively because of that. I'm saying that we know that those are factors. You know those are factors. You should be a little bit more clear about that. So instead, when Khamenei says this might be foreign forces, it makes it look insane. And I've got 1,000 problems with the Ayatollah, and I got no love for him, and I think his government is corrupt. I don't. Those are not real elections, and I can go on and on there. He's oppressing his own people. But he's not out of his mind when he says there are foreign factors at play. The U.S. also looking to undermine Iran. Israel also looking to undermine Iran. I mean, if you don't understand that those forces are aligned against Iran, then you don't understand foreign policy at all. And I think you guys do. Now, again, don't get me wrong. The Iranian government has so many issues that demonstrations and uprisings are perfectly understandable. And when they say things like, they calmed down. One of the guys who works for the government, deputy governor of Tehran, said that the police, quote, calmed down the riots by inviting people to respect law and order.
Right. Yeah, that's a ridiculous statement. It is a ridiculous statement. And look, my read of what's going on right now is that, yes, there is certainly a possibility that there are foreign forces at play. And what I mean by that is there is already a sense of frustration among Iranians because of the fact that the sanctions crippled their economy and continue to do so. Inflation is incredibly high. Unemployment is incredibly high. For the general public, it's about 14%. But if you look at Iranian youth, it's at about 40%. So once you start messing with people's financial well-being, that's when they, start getting more and more frustrated and angry and want to take to the streets because they might feel like they have nothing else to lose. And there is a lot of frustration, especially among the younger population in Iran, toward the religious leadership. They want a more liberal society, they want more freedom, and so there is that component of this uprising. But I think that it's very possible that Saudi Arabia or other, foreign players can sense that tension and sense that frustration, and they're stoking it in order to, kind of encourage this type of uprising to happen.
But we're playing a dangerous game here. But what I mean by we is United States and its allies, including Saudi Arabia. But honestly, I like to do constructive critique and give you an alternative. But this is another one of those problems that is very, very difficult to solve. And I don't know how it gets solved in the long run. Here's why. So even state television admits that 9 people were killed overnight, or at least 20 killed so far. And it's not because the police were inviting them to respect the law. No, the police come and crack their skulls open.
With water cannons and other weapons, yes.
And water cannons is, of course, the least of it if you've got 20 people dead in the streets. And there's further threats that they'll kill more protesters if this continues. So, I want to get rid of the mullahs. I'm secular. I think the Iranian people deserve a lot better. They're one of the great history, traditions and cultures and people in the world. I don't want them being ruled by Muslim clerics or any clerics. On the other hand, you destabilize Iran. And so, yes, their leadership is saying, well, then it could be like Syria or Libya. But so they're doing propaganda to save their own hide. On the other hand, it could be. It could be like Iraq. It could be like Syria. And do we really want to destabilize the Middle East to that degree? And the problem once you destabilize, perhaps even a bigger problem is, like in Iraq, like in so many of these places, hardly ever do the rational, secular moderates come out winning when a massive civil war begins.
You're right. But also, just keep in mind that while maybe the U.S., and by the way, the reason why I say maybe is because we're speculating. Obviously, we don't have the evidence in front of us to prove that Saudi Arabia or the United States or both are allied to, stoke these tensions. However, what we do know is that the sanctions that were imposed on Iran over, their nuclear development did cripple their economy and continue to do so. Even though we lifted those sanctions as part of that deal, it's really hard to get money into the country. So, for instance, they had a massive earthquake, and people in other countries wanted to send money to their relatives or to those who needed it, and the banks can't accept the money. There are certain elements of those sanctions that are still in place, right? And so people are really suffering in Iran right now. And part of the reason why is because of U.S. policy that, in my opinion, was incredibly short-sighted. Now, look, we got the deal that we wanted, but the ramifications of those sanctions are still at play, and that's leading to more instability in that part of the world.
And by the way, look, unfortunately, a lot of people are at fault here, and certainly the Iranian government, too. So we lifted the sanctions, and they got Iranian money back. Trump paints it as if it was our money and Obama decided to give them our money. No, we had frozen their bank accounts, and we had gotten the whole world to work together to freeze their bank accounts to make sure they didn't make nukes. So that's why that deal was successful. Now they don't have the uranium. That deal is working. But when the money got unfrozen, did it go to the Iranian people? Of course not. The government's corrupt, and they kept most of it. And that is also leading to actual, real tension that is, I'm sure, a part of these demonstrations and protests as well. I don't think that they're all just Saudi stoked. Saudi Arabia can go around. Like I told you earlier, they try to stoke even jihadists in the Palestinian areas, and they couldn't, right? So here they could, because people are legitimately angry about the unemployment, the corruption, and the fact that this government does not represent them. I don't know how we get a liberal democracy in Iran, which I desperately want, without going through turmoil that usually gives an advantage to radicals and fundamentalists.
Right. Yeah, and that's a big fear, and we'll see how it plays out. But right now, it's not looking good, and it doesn't seem as though the protests or the protesters are convinced to, calm down and go home. They're still protesting. So unrest continues in Iran. In fact, the situation has gotten so dire that more than 20 people have been reported killed as a result of being part of these demonstrations. Now, CNN has done some coverage of this, and I want to show you the next video because it shows you just how severe the situation is in some of these protests. They're happening throughout the country, and in some areas you see more violence than others. Take a look.
What we have seen is people pulling down the posters of the Supreme Leader, people chanting for his overthrow. We have also seen videos emerging that appear to show people who may have been injured at some of these protests. We've seen videos where people are being carried away from what appear to be the protests. We've also seen what appear to be people with gunshot wounds being treated in makeshift medical facilities. One young man on a hospital gurney appeared to have a gunshot wound all the way through his abdomen.
So that video footage is difficult to watch, and as I mentioned, already 21 people have been reported as dead. Now, Donald Trump decided to take advantage of this opportunity to tweet his thoughts. So let's hear what he has to say. The people of Iran are finally acting against the brutal and corrupt Iranian regime. All of the money that President Obama so foolishly gave them went into terrorism and into their pockets. The people have little food, big inflation, and no human rights. The U.S. is watching. Well, if you're watching, then why would Iran be one of the countries that you would ban from the travel, include in that travel ban? If you're so concerned about the people of Iran, you want to help them out. But nonetheless, he's taking this opportunity to, say that he's right, Obama's wrong.
So let's break down a couple parts of that. So Obama so foolishly gave them, right? Again, Obama didn't give them any money. It wasn't our money. What Obama did is he went to China and Russia and Europe and all of these countries that have all of these different issues with us and convinced all of them to work together to freeze Iranian bank accounts all across the world so that they would give up their uranium program. And they did. And in return, they just simply got the money back that was their money that we had taken hostage. Look, I don't know if that's an ethical thing to do, but it worked. And yes, okay, great. Iran does not have uranium. They can't make nukes. And in return, they basically got their own money back. But Trump makes it appear over and over again as if Obama took American money and just handed it to the Iranians. That didn't happen. It's not true. And so then you get into the U.S. is watching. Anna, I hadn't even thought of what you mentioned there. If you're so worried about the Ayatollah oppressing his own people, and if they're running away from the mullahs, wouldn't you want to accept them with open arms?
No, they're all terrorists.
Yeah.
I mean, in Trump's eyes, of course.
Right. So then don't pretend that you care about the Iranian people. Okay. But the second part of that is, if you care about the protesters, saying that the U.S. is on their side, it's a mixed bag. Look, I got mixed feelings about it because I think in 2009 when they were doing the Green Revolution in Iran, I thought that Obama was very non-committal about it, very Obama-like, right? And I wish that, and to be fair, I don't know what he was doing behind the scenes, but outwardly it appeared that he wasn't doing much. And there they had real momentum, and they might have been able to do something.
But what are they going to do? I mean, you'd have to literally find a way to overthrow the religious leadership. And I mean,
no, but it's during the Green Revolution, it got so bad that some of the clerics' houses were starting to get surrounded, and that is when you can actually topple a government. And I don't know if I'm being unfair, but it didn't look like we were giving much support there. And to be another layer of concern is if they had failed, it could have been a disaster, and it could have, or they have succeeded. They toppled the government, but we can't replace it with anything, and you have massive instability. So on the other hand, when Trump jumps in here with like a bull in a china shop, and he's like, oh, the U.S. is on the side of the protesters. That doesn't help the protesters. Well, because then the Ayatollah, as he said today, will turn around and go, I told you foreign agents were causing all this in the first place. These demonstrators are not for Iran. They're working for the American dogs like Trump. And it helps the mullahs and the Ayatollahs with their propaganda.
What Trump does with domestic policy and how he just kind of shoots from the hip, speaks without thinking, tweets without thinking, it concerns me, of course, right? But I think what's even more terrifying is his rhetoric in addressing foreign policy or foreign countries. And he doesn't think about the ramifications of anything he says or the nuances of the situation or what could possibly happen in the future before he puts out those tweets. So you're right. Everything that he says on Twitter can and will be used against him. And he just doesn't think about that. Doesn't care, doesn't think about it. Someone needs to, tie up his hands so he doesn't use Twitter in the early mornings of any day.
But that's because Donald Trump doesn't care about anybody but himself. So if he actually wanted to help those protesters, he might go about things quietly, diplomatically, behind the scenes.
He doesn't do that.
What he cares about is, I was right about Iran. Obama was wrong, I was right. Ooh, yeah, Iran bad. Yeah, I got it, dude. I got it. It's all about you.
Because look, doing things diplomatically and quietly would maybe indicate that he wouldn't get credit and attention that he so desperately wants, right? For him, the end game is not peace. The end game isn't creating a stable situation in the Middle East. The end game is, how can I get as much attention as possible by being as boastful as possible?
You're absolutely right. The only thing he wants to expand is not the demonstrations, but the size of his head. Sad. Baby. Yeah. Okay. He doesn't say baby that much anymore.
He doesn't. He does say sad still.
Yes, he's sticking with sad. Okay.
All right. Break?
Let's do a quick break. Okay. When we come back, the right wing in this country goes after a pop singer on the issue of Israel. Why do they do that? Are they right or they're wrong? Okay. Anyway, we'll explain when we come back.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no-go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control? We're go. Stats? We're good. Iguana? Sir, we are go for landing. Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir? I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the cannon firing now weeks old, and waiting in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, We're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not going to happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
Hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds. Alright, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them. 30 seconds.
The Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jane try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
Alright, everyone, to their stations. Cameras, position, social media team, race run follows. 10 seconds. As the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is going to be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be our finest hour 2 yet.
Come on, Jake.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
For me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
You said I had small hands. They're not small, huh? I never heard that one before.
Back on the Young Turks. Let me read a couple of quick tweets for you. Hashtag TYT Live to tweet to us during the show. You could also use YouTube Super Chat. Zeiss Cube says, "We should tread lightly here. This wouldn't be the first time our government created an enemy where there wasn't one." Well, indeed, which leads to Jake's tweet. Also, the U.S. used CIA-funded protests to overthrow the Iranian government in the 50s, so they might be afraid of us doing it again. Well, that is unfortunately very true. We're the ones who started the fire. They had a democratically elected leader that was deposed in a coup set up by the CIA. The U.S. government has now admitted to that. And we ruined their democracy, and we put a dictator in charge so that he would give our oil companies cheap oil, British and U.S. oil companies cheap oil. We never got the benefits of that oil. Only the companies did. And then the frustration with the dictator led to the mullahs and the ayatollah, and here we are. And Gabby writes, and if this continues to escalate in Iran, we need to be watchful of any right-wingers trying to use it as an excuse to intervene militarily. They are desperate to go to war there.
Yeah, I mean, I think my speculation is that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, they're totally out of control. And so you think Trump is bad, and he is. And he might go along with that because he doesn't know any better, just whoever comes in the room last, right? But the neocons, guys like Bill Kristol, who go around, get a lot of credit on TV for saying bad things about Trump now, they deserve no credit at all. They're worse than Trump. Trump has not yet started a war. Bill Kristol did help start a war that got hundreds of thousands, arguably millions of civilians killed. Those guys are monsters, and under no circumstances should we let them do it again in Iran. Okay, more stories for you guys.
All right. Musical artist Lorde is being called a bigot in a full-page ad that was published in the Washington Post. Now, who took out that ad? Rabbi Shmuley Boitiek. He is, of course, a huge public figure, an Orthodox Jewish individual who is very pro-Israel and against anyone, supposedly, who would ever dare to boycott Israel's right-wing government. Now,
okay, I'm just going to jump in here to say my point of view on two things that you just mentioned there.
Yeah.
One, Shmuley Boitiek is not pro-Israel. I'm not saying he's anti-Israel. He's just pro-Israeli right-wing.
That's true.
Right? And so it's like saying being in favor of Dick Cheney is being pro-American. No, it's not. Being in favor of Trump is being pro-American. No, it's not. There's a right wing and a left wing in America and a middle. Same in Israel. Mm-hmm. So
he's pro-right wing, period, even if it goes against Israel. There's a little twist to this story, which I'll get to in just a minute, but you're absolutely right about that.
And the second clarification is, look, Shmuley's been around a long time. I know him a little bit. In person, he's a very decent guy and very personable.
You know, he gave love advice on Oprah's show.
No, I know. He's a character. And it's...
Shalom in the home.
So, I mean, look, I get it. He's a character, right? But without the backing of billionaire benefactors, as you're about to explain, he'd be nothing. He doesn't have a large audience at all. At all. You think he's got the money to buy a full-page Washington Post ad? No! It's other people behind the scenes that are doing that. So
yes. Okay. So Lorde, young pop star. I don't know if she's a pop star. But either way, she's a musical artist that I happen to enjoy. And she was set to perform in Tel Aviv in June. However, there was a bit of controversy because those who believe in boycotting Israel over its treatment of Palestinians urged her to not perform there, to be part of this boycott. And she eventually decided to follow suit, and she canceled her appearance in Tel Aviv. She said the following in regard to her decision: I have had a lot of discussions with people holding many views, and I think the right decision at this time is to cancel the show. I'm not too proud to admit I didn't make the right call on this one. Okay, nothing particularly rude or mean, not even close to anti-Semitic in that statement whatsoever. However, Rabbi Shmuley decided to take advantage of this opportunity to put out this ad and allege that she's anti-Semitic for canceling her show, and that New Zealand as a whole is anti-Semitic. New Zealand is where she's from. Now, the headline of this ad said, Lorde and New Zealand ignore Syria to attack Israel.
But who said they were ignoring Syria?
Yeah,
did she move the concert from Tel Aviv to Damascus? No. Is she doing a concert in Syria? No. Do you have any idea what her opinion on Syria is? No. It's a form of distraction to say, well, Israel might be occupying millions of people illegally under international law, but squirrel, or in this case, Syria.
Right, and okay, so yes, that's a distraction. And then I was curious about this allegation that New Zealand is anti-Semitic. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why, and it turns out New Zealand happened to be one of the countries that voted along other countries, or in addition to other countries, against or in favor of a UN resolution calling for the U.S. to withdraw its decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Also in 2016, New Zealand voted along with other UN countries to essentially call out Israel for building illegal settlements. Okay, so that's the reason why New Zealand is considered anti-Semitic in Rabbi Shmuley's eyes.
Okay, let's just stop there for 2 more points. Okay, one is, can a whole country be anti-Semitic? That sounds a little preposterous, let alone New Zealand. Like, everybody in New Zealand woke up one day and they're like, what should we do today? Should we all be anti-Semites? Sure. Hey, second of all, 127 countries voted for that resolution. But for Shmuley and his backers, yeah, that's what they want to do. They want to smear the whole world. They don't think 127 countries voted against us. Maybe we're doing something wrong. They think, nah, that's it. We knew it. They're anti-Semites. Look, the world has a history of anti-Semitism that runs super deep. So if you're concerned about it, I get it, brother, and you're right about that. But to then use that as an excuse and a shield when all these countries are legitimately worried that you're breaking international law and oppressing other people, well, then you're actually doing the cause of alleviating anti-Semitism damage, because you're crying wolf. And you're saying, no, the whole world is anti-Semitic. Everybody in New Zealand is anti-Semitic. This random pop singer is anti-Semitic because they don't agree not with Israel, but with a right-wing position in Israel.
Now, Lord is not random. Okay, she's awesome. But look, you're right about that, because it really does minimize real anti-Semitism, which is alive and well today. Something that should be addressed, something that should be talked about. But if you decide that you don't want to hold your show in Tel Aviv because you don't like the way the Israeli government is handling things with the Palestinians, then that is your right. You shouldn't be forced to go perform somewhere, or otherwise you're going to be deemed an anti-Semite in a full-page ad in a mainstream publication. That's absolutely ludicrous. And by the way, I did not forget about the twist to this story. So, Jake, you mentioned his backers. Who are his backers? Well, it turns out that Rabbi Shmuley's organization is funded by Sheldon Adelson. Okay, and who do we know is a little questionable? Not a little questionable, but considerably questionable toward the Jewish community here in the United States. The alt-right. Okay, Steve Bannon has been on the record saying that Breitbart is, the place where the alt-right have a voice. Well, Rabbi Shmuley should probably dislike Bannon, but he doesn't. In fact, he has defended Bannon after he was called out by the Anti-Defamation League. Let me give you the details to that. In 2016, Boyatek defended Bannon from accusations made by Jonathan Greenblatt of the U.S. Anti-Defamation League, who criticized Bannon's appointment as a White House advisor, saying it was a sad day when a man who presided over the premier website of the alt-right, a loose-knit group of white nationalists and unabashed anti-Semites and racists, is slated to be a senior staff member in the People's House. So, when it comes to actual anti-Semitic behavior, he's all for it, because his funders are all for it. But when it comes to someone like Lord, who has all the right in the world to not perform anywhere she chooses, she's an anti-Semite.
So, look, Shmuley and Bannon took a picture together, smiling, having a hunky-dory time in the White House back when Bannon was in the White House.
We have that photo, 58.
Yeah, so there they are. Now, Bannon, in his divorce proceedings, his wife said he didn't want the kids to attend a Jewish school because he didn't want them being around Jews. Now, that's a divorce proceeding. They just get ugly. Take it with a grain of salt, okay? But Milo, BuzzFeed did a terrific analysis of this, so much so that even Robert Mercer, another huge backer of Breitbart, had to backpedal away from Breitbart a little bit. Milo, when he was doing the compilation of what the alt-right stands for Breitbart, run by Steve Bannon, conferred with neo-Nazis to figure out what the alt-right positions were, and then put them into that treatise for what the alt-right stands for. So the treatise that Steve Bannon's website promoted was written partly by neo-Nazis. But what does Adelson want? He wants the right-wing position in Israel. He wants the unions crushed because the unions are in his casinos, and he wants to pay his workers less money. He wants deregulation. He wants lower taxes. So if Trump and Bannon are monsters and potentially anti-Semites, Trump went to a gathering of Republican Jewish leaders and said, if any room knows how to renegotiate, it's this room. My God, if Lord had said that, anybody in New Zealand had said that, Shmuley would be taking out 7 full-page ads in the Washington Post. So they do, but they back all those guys anyway because they're not interested in making sure that the Jews are protected, etc. They're interested in using anti-Semitism as a club to beat over the people over the head with, and more important than Lord, they want to intimidate anyone else who might say, hey, you should join the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, or you should be concerned about going and doing economic activity in Israel, as long as they continue the illegal occupation of the Palestinians. These people don't have an issue with Israel. They never said anything about Israel itself. They want a 2-state solution. They just want to make sure the Palestinians also have rights.
Exactly. All right, moving on to other news. A popular YouTuber is apologizing today after his decision to publish a video showing the hanging body of an individual who committed suicide. Logan Paul is that YouTuber, and apparently during a recent trip to Japan, he went to a forest that's known for suicides and hangings, and ended up filming a man's body as it was hanging from a tree. Now, throughout the video, he is laughing, making jokes. During the moment that he saw that body, he became a little more serious, but then later on continued joking around. The video was uploaded Sunday under the title, "We Found a Dead Body in a Japanese Suicide Forest," and it garnered more than 6 million views in less than a day. Now, his videos usually get, his personal vlogs, which he does on a daily basis, usually get around 6 million views. Now, when Paul and his buddies stumble on the body, this is an area near Mount Fuji that has become notorious for suicide. His reaction is initially one of disbelief. He was quoted as saying, "Yo, are you alive? Are you effing with us?" Later on, he talks about how suicide is not a joke. Suicide is not a joke. Depression and mental illness are not a joke. We came here with an intent to focus on the haunted aspect of the forest. This obviously just became very real, and obviously a lot of people are going through a lot of shit in their lives, okay? And he also included a link for suicide prevention in the description of the video. But people took issue with it because A, he filmed that dead body, B, the headline or the title to his video really capitalized on that, and C, throughout the video, I mean, he's wearing this goofy hat, he's making light of things. It was just incredibly insensitive, especially when you consider that suicide is one of the top reasons for death in Japan. I'll give you the numbers to that in just a minute.
So, look, full context here. Every day he does a 15-minute video. It's edited, so that cuts both in favor of him and against him. So in this case, he had done a video about all the quirky, different cultural things that he saw in Japan, or quirky, at least according to him. So in the rest of the video, not related to the forest, he's laughing and joking. In the middle, he's got the forest thing, which is appalling, and he blurred out the face, but he did say that serious stuff. You know, let's give it both sides here. But when his cameraman basically is concerned about standing next to the body, he jokes, "You never stand to a next to a dead guy before," and laughs. Okay, and so obviously people are concerned that that is not taking it seriously. Look, what he should have done is, I guess, broken his normal pattern of doing 15-minute vlogs, or do a 15-minute vlog on Japan, leave this out, and then do a more serious one about this. I think him putting it up is not necessarily wrong. Showing the full body, even with the blurred face, that's problematic. Laughing in any portion of the video is obviously an issue. So, what he says is, look, for 460 days straight, I've been doing this kind of video. and so, I understand that, because a lot of people don't understand. Like, for example, we do a 2-hour show, and sometimes people only watch one clip, and they'll think, that's the only clip we've ever done. I'm like, no, we cover that issue 100 times. Go back and watch our videos on it on the channel. So I hear that. But he also said as one of his excuses, like, it just happened at the spur of the moment, and what could we do?
You didn't have to publish it in this jokey 15-minute long video. Yeah. Let me give you his exact apology.
Yeah, okay.
So he says people were alleging or accusing him of doing this for the views. He says that's not the case. I didn't do it for the views. I get views. I did it because I thought I could make a positive ripple on the internet, not cause a monsoon of negativity. That's never the intention. I intended to raise awareness for suicide and suicide prevention. So suicide is a serious issue. I do not think he went into it with the intention of raising awareness about suicide.
No way.
Yeah, that's BS. But suicide remains a top cause of death for people between the ages of 15 and 39 in Japan. So it is a serious problem. And yeah, it was really, really, really bad judgment, and hopefully like a humbling moment for him. So he can maybe think twice before posting that kind of sensitive material. And look, I'm not surprised that people reacted the way that they did. I mean, suicide is a big problem in the United States too. I'm sure that there are tons of his fans who had family members who took their own lives. So this is a sensitive topic, and including it in the middle of this jokey, quirky video is not the way to go.
Yeah, so the last couple of things here. Look, he edits the video. It's not a live blog. So he could have done it any way he wanted. He chose to put it in the middle. They had plenty of time to think about it and decided to present it in that way. So it was definitely wrong in that sense. And him saying he's not doing it for the views, both true and untrue. So some of the articles are painting it like, oh my God, he got 6 million views and that's why he did it. No, as Anna pointed out, almost all of his videos get 6 million views. It's just that mainstream news has never heard of YouTube. So they're like, 6 million views, that's the largest thing we've ever heard. No, he gets it every freaking time.
Yeah.
Right? On the other hand, is he doing it to get views in general? Of course he is. He went to the suicide force because he thought it'd be a cool thing. I'm sure he didn't expect to run into a dead body, and then he made the wrong judgment calls on that, and he came out looking ugly. Last thing, though, is he's 22. Did I do stupid things when I was 22? Yes. Right? So, you know, I think that there's bounds of reason. Okay, like, I think he gets it, that it was wrong.
I think that this is, honestly, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt in saying this, I think this is a symptom of, like, internet culture. Like, and what I mean by internet culture is we've become so desensitized to things. Like, people will do outrageous, terrible things on a regular basis for attention, and they become instant celebrities. Like, bad behavior gets rewarded. And sometimes, you know, you go a little too far, and people bite back. And I think that's what happened here. Look, young YouTubers especially, not all of them, but a lot of them do crazy things, whether it's stunts or pranks, whatever it is, to make a name for themselves. And it's worked. It's worked handsomely in the past. So I think this is just a symptom of a culture that's been around for a little while now.
So last thing on this is, guys, it's actually a combination of things. Yes, on the internet, people get a ton of attention, and he got a ton of attention here for this, and oftentimes people get rewarded for bad behavior. But a lot of that is because of the mainstream news. Now, the mainstream news very rarely reported about him or his brother, Jake Paul, who are both incredibly popular online and with millennials. Some of his music videos get 35 million views, but you guys never reported on that. So instead, the one time he does something wrong, you, in a sense, reward him with a lot of media coverage just to be able to say, you see this kid on the internet, he's such a bad guy, right? But what you don't realize is when you do that, whether it's for him or not, he's already popular, but it incentivizes other people to go, what can I do that's so bad that'll get the media attention? Because when you're doing good things, no one in the mainstream media will cover you. So
that's the case for any profession, though.
I don't think so. Are you kidding me? If the TV guys get slightly better ratings, everyone will be like, what a star! Right? He's larger than anyone in cable news by a landslide. And yet the only time anyone ever covered him was when he did something wrong.
Yeah. Because you're defending, what is his name again? Logan Paul? Because he has a brother named Jake Paul, and I mixed them up. Jake Paul did Disney stuff.
All right.
And I only know that because I learned today.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's keep going.
Distrust in government management of tap water has led to a movement known as the raw water movement. These are people who do not want to drink tap water. They want to consume water that's off the grid, and unfortunately, it is incredibly dangerous. Now, let's hear from one of these people who is a huge fan of drinking so-called raw water, which, by the way, is completely untreated water. Untreated. Go.
The water from springs is the cleanest water in the world. It's been filtered by the earth itself, so water percolates down through the earth and is filtered by all that earth substrate, and it accumulates in deep aquifers. And when those aquifers are full, that water is brought up to the surface at springs. Water is so much more than just H2O molecules. Water, as it's found in nature, is a liquid crystalline matrix of H2O molecules that suspends a variety of beneficial microbes and microalgae, as well as a variety of dissolved solids like mineral ions. So we need all of that. That's what we're adapted to. We're not any more adapted to refined H2O than we are to refined carbohydrates like processed white sugar. One of the issues today with the water that contemporary modern people are drinking is that in the form of tap water, it's, I would say, contaminated with antibiotic substances like chlorine, or contaminated with halides like fluoride, which we know is neurotoxic. And when we talk about bottled waters, one of the main issues that we have there is the contamination of plastics.
So there are businesses popping up that offer raw water for a pretty hefty price.
Of course.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. There's one business, let me look up the numbers. There's one business that sells 2.5 gallons for about $36.99 each, and then you can refill that bottle for a cheaper price, $15 each time you refill.
I hope that the refill is even raw.
So Live Water is the business that I'm talking about. That video was from the Live Water website. But again, this is untreated water. They believe that the microbes and the algae in that water is good for you. But in reality, one of the best enhancements or developments when it comes to water consumption is the fact that we got rid of dangerous bacteria, viruses, things that cause typhoid or cholera. Also, there are parasites in so-called raw water. And so, they're taking a risk here, and there are some companies that are profiting from it handsomely.
That dude, the caveman in the woods, everything he said was wrong. It's just not true. It's like people say, like, oh, well, when we were cavemen, we used to drink the water from the streams. Yeah, when we were cavemen, we died when we were like 13. So that doesn't make any sense. In fact, there is literature going back 1,500 years to the Greeks, to the Egyptians, etc. And you know what they did with their water? They had to clean it. I mean, things as simple as animals defecating in the water creates bacteria, and you got to clean the water. But these guys are down the stream going like, oh, wonderful raw water. No, there's bacteria.
So there's an interesting trend among those on the far right who listen to Alex Jones, for instance, and who believe in all these conspiracy theories, and then those who are, extremely far off to the left. Like, they agree on this issue. And look, I get it. Like, I understand their perspective because there are significant water issues in the United States.
That's true.
Lead in our water, mismanagement of the water. So people are concerned about those things, and they have every right to be. However, they're unfortunately going in the wrong direction and consuming something that could really hurt them or kill them, and we need to find a better way to get safer drinking water without resorting to bacteria, viruses, microbes, algae, and parasites.
But look, guys, not only are you endangering yourself and others around you by drinking so-called raw water, and you're paying through the nose for it, but you're actually hurting the cause of clean water. Because so then when we go to do a report about lead in the water in places like Flint, people go, oh yeah, that's that dude hanging out in the woods who's drinking the raw water, right? No, there's real lead problems in the water. And if you're going to bring up issues about plastic and how it affects water, we can have legitimate conversations about that. But when you go in this direction and you start talking about fluoride in the water, when it's actually cleaned the water for centuries, you lose credibility and you hurt overall cause of keeping the water clean in America. That's my opinion on it. All right, guys, we're out of time. Sorry. Rebel Headquarters is next, and we got Benjamin Jealous up next. You're going to love it. Okay, bye-bye. Rebel headquarters. So we started this show fairly recently, a couple of weeks ago. We've had a bunch of candidates on who are just Democrats running at the national level. But that's not all we want to do with the show, of course. We want to have all progressive voices, and we want this to be the headquarters for progressive movements. So I think today is a great example of that. We've got two folks for you who are not running at the national level, but doing things that are amazing at the state level. So first guest is a huge actor in progressive circles, so let me get into it. Ben Jealous is the former head of the NAACP. In fact, he was the youngest ever president and CEO of the NAACP. Unprecedented growth for the organization under his watch. He was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter during the 2016 race. He's a Rhodes Scholar, and he's now running for Maryland's governor position. So, Ben, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you, Jake. It's good to be here.
All right, great to have you. So let's just start nice and easy with, after having this storied background, what made you decide to run for governor in Maryland?
We have to make sure that our families move forward no matter what happens in Washington. And sort of irony of this moment in politics in our country is because of the states' rights movement, all of this power has been concentrated in our states over the last half century. And we as progressives need to understand that we can
back in March told
make
me
sure that everybody in our state has health care, that our schools are fully funded, by simply taking control of our states and having the courage
using the game much differently. Can you tell me the biggest single thing the president has accomplished for the American people during his time on the golf course?
I think it would certainly be developing deeper and better relationships with members of Congress, in which those relationships have helped push forward the president's agenda, specifically when it comes to helping get the tax reform and tax cuts passed. A lot of that, I think, and the success of that came from the strong relationships that the president has. And he's played off with a number of senators and used that time certainly to accomplish that.
Real solutions to real problems. There seems to be a bit of a transparency issue with his time on the golf course.
Solve our healthcare crisis, because quite frankly, even the Rand Corporation will tell you that
there was this incident with the box truck. Why does it seem as though the White House is a little
there's nothing more expensive than maintaining the status quo. Folks are responding to my campaign, because I'm the only campaign that we're saying we'll make sure that
I think it's the press that has an issue at this time. Of course, the president's extremely proud of the accomplishments we had during 2017. I don't think anyone can argue it's probably one of the most successful first years in office, passed major legislation, reworked the court system, and got a Supreme Court justice nominated and approved on the bench in the first year, a booming economy, massive gains against the war on ISIS. I think we've had an extremely successful 2017, and some of that's due to the relationship building that he was able to do there. We'll take one last question, Dana. I'm sorry.
Is there a reason for no readout or confirmation?
We provide information when it's pertinent to the day, and we'll continue to do that.
Knowing how to get big things done that folks are responding to.
So before I get back into the Maryland race in particular, I mean, you mentioned your mom there. So your mom was black, your dad was white, and I didn't know this until recently. And it turns out that they could not get married in the state of Maryland before 1967, and they had to go outside the state to get married. That's amazing. That's in your, well, at least in their lifetime, right? And I mean, how did that inform you growing up?
It's part of what drove me as president of the NAACP to get us to come out on the right side of marriage equality. For Julian Bond and I, it was a big project during our years running the association together. And what I knew was that it's that when the state allows itself to deem two people's union illegal, there's actually special punishments that are reserved for those people's children. I know how I was bullied even growing up just a few years after my parents' marriage had been made legal. The way that we got stares, the way that people said things, the fist fights I had to get into on the schoolyard defending my mom's honor, people saying that she must be my maid, all of those things. And fighting words in my public school if somebody called you rich. So, well, he's rich because he has a maid. I was like, no, that's my mom. What my parents taught me is that that the real kind of origin of courage for each of us is love. and that there's nothing worth fighting for more than love, and that we have to bring courage to what we do every day. I mean, my dad was one of the few white guys in Baltimore to go to jail repeatedly to desegregate our lunch counters, and that was because he was a public school teacher who was outraged by the mistreatment of his school children, the black school children he was teaching at Harlem Park Junior High when he was downtown on the weekends. And, we fundamentally have to fight for all of our state's kids as if they're all our kids. That's what my parents taught me to do. And, quite frankly, they inspire me every day.
So if you guys, by the way, want to be part of Ben's campaign, the links are always down below in the description box on YouTube and on the comment section on Facebook. You can either donate or just go to his website, find out more. But also, to me, always the most important thing is to volunteer, because knocking on doors makes the biggest difference in calling people.
Absolutely.
So if you can't give your time, then give some money instead if you believe in Ben's cause. So the cause you believed in 2016, Ben, was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Now, you're arguably a stalwart in the Democratic Party. Why'd you go in that direction?
I supported Bernie for the same reason I supported Jesse Jackson back in '88, same reason that Bernie Sanders supported Jesse Jackson in '84 and '88, which is that on those issues, those big three issues that Dr. King said, by which every leader should be judged, racism, militarism, and greed, he was the one with the clearest vision for fighting all of it. And, in this campaign, we're very much building on what Bernie started. We're very much about finishing at the state level what Bernie started, ensuring that we get health care for everybody, that we fully fund education, that we make our public universities radically more affordable, and that we pay for it in part by ending mass incarceration, making sure that we, frankly, stop these senseless killings of unarmed people, typically unarmed black folks in our state, like Freddie Gray, and set a better model for the rest of the country. And so, I'm proud to have Bernie's support and to have the support of activists across the state who followed Bernie when I was co-chairing his campaign here in Maryland.
So you mentioned criminal justice reform there. What could you do as governor in Maryland to make that a reality in that state?
I'm proud to have led the successful effort about 5 years ago in Maryland to abolish our death penalty. And what frustrates me is that our state was poised then to go much further in actually fighting mass incarceration, and yet we're lagging behind states like Texas and Georgia, not to mention New York and California, in shrinking our prison system and frankly getting our dollars focused on rehab, and yes, even getting some of those dollars back over to help fund public higher education. As governor, folks can count on me to do what I helped the governor of Georgia do, which I helped activists in Texas do, and ultimately Rick Perry signed on to, which is to pass smart and safe policies that get us focused on getting the truly dangerous people off the streets while making sure that people like addicts actually get the help they need, making sure that the 85% of inmates are coming back to our communities, are actually rehabilitated and prepared for the workforce. Too long we've had people come out of our prisons just as illiterate as they went in. We should be making sure that each of them learn how to read. I've been clear that as governor, I'll shrink our prison systems. I will focus them on, really focus law enforcement on getting the most dangerous people off the streets. And yet we'll make sure that everybody who's in prison ultimately comes back better educated and better prepared to make a real contribution to our society.
Well, just a couple of days ago, California legalized marijuana recreationally. It went into effect. But it wasn't just that. To me, the more important part was they said that anyone who was convicted of those low-level offenses could clear their record. Because, we've had presidents who smoked marijuana, we know did, and they'll at least never go to prison over it. And they clear their records. And then even said that they were going to favor the local communities that had been targeted before in the war on drugs in setting up the new businesses related to the legal industry. What do you think of those developments, and is that possible in Maryland?
Those are critical. Really being smart about ensuring that the communities frankly, have been most likely to how do I say this? Making sure that as you create a new industry, that you don't lock communities out is critical. Here in Maryland, one of our biggest scandals in the state is that this governor, as he has doled out the licenses for the medical cannabis industry, has not included one majority people of color owned company in a state that's 30% black and has a significant Latino and Asian and even Native American population. Not one majority people of color owned company has gotten a license. Here in Maryland, we have to go further. We need to go further. I think California sets a good model of what's possible, especially when you look at employment, making sure that folks from hard-hit communities are included, making sure, quite frankly, that the poor don't just get poorer as you switch to a more rational policy. I fully support the legalization of cannabis for the use of grown-ups, by adults. At the same time, as a parent with 2 kids in the public schools, we want to make sure that we minimize we avoid any unintended consequences as far as our young people. But what we know is that our young people are already paying a price, Cenk, and it's not just young people paying a price because the enforcement is hugely racially disproportionate. There's a ton of discrimination in how these laws are enforced. It's also the homicides. My campaign talked to 3 police commanders in Baltimore City off the record to find out what's been happening as far as the homicides in the city. Each one of them said, in the last 2 years, I'm not sure why they've spiked so much, but when they look across the last 10 years, what strikes them is that approximately half of the homicides in the eyes of these three commanders, approximately half of the homicides were one set of weed dealers enforcing territory against another set of weed dealers. And that's the kind of hidden price of the drug trade that we don't talk about. And a lot of our young people have died in Baltimore because of the trade. And that's what happens when you can't regulate an industry through the courts. And it's so easy for young people to get their hands on this product and try to compete with others. So there's a lot of good that can come from us being more inclusive and more courageous on that issue.
All right, we're unfortunately out of time. I'd love to have you back on, talk about some of the other issues. And I'm curious as to how the Democratic Party is reacting to you in that race, because you should be the clear leader in that race, and just a really interesting dynamic.
Well, thank you, Cenk. Look, I would love to come back. We are, our campaign, my campaign's been in the top tier. We had, my running mate is Susie Turnbull, who was vice chair of the Democratic Party under Howard Dean, and former chair of the Maryland Party back in 2010 when we turned out 125,000 more voters than we did in 2014. And we're actually building the only campaign in the state that's really unifying the party. After we were endorsed by Bernie Sanders, we were endorsed by Cory Booker. And so, that's what we've got to do. That's what Virginia and Alabama has taught us, that if we actually root ourselves in the sort of progressive policies that, we all preached in Bernie's campaign, and we unify the party around those policies, we can win. That's what this campaign is about.
Yeah, and from time to time, people in Washington tell me, where are your progressive stars? Well, you're looking at him. There he is, right? And so one of the more brilliant progressives in the country, Ben Jealous, running for governor in Maryland. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you're really going to want to meet Katie Fahey, because she's doing something in Maryland that could help Michigan, that could help bring democracy back. And it's an organic movement. I love it. I want to find out more about it. It's to end gerrymandering, but I'm really curious about how it started. So let's find out when we come back.